I gave you the road. Why don't you take it? Oh, what a miserable meathead. Why don't you go? Yeah. Boy, that would asphyxiate you. Oh, boy, you're beautiful. I don't believe it. Now, you miserable meathead, come on. I'm in no mood to play games. Let's go. You wanted me to hit that car head on.
Hello and welcome to Book versus Movie. This is a podcast where we read books that have been adapted into movies and then we try to decide which we like better, the book or the movie. I am Margot P. of ColoniaBook.com and this is my good friend and co-host, Margot D. of Brooklyn Fitchick.
Hi, everyone.
My snakes!
The snakes!
That's my favorite point of this movie, this week's movie. My snakes! Today we're going to have a really fun episode. But before we get to that, we picked up a lot of new people in January when we were talking about movies that have been adapted from plays, not necessarily books. So in case you're wondering about that, yeah, we usually do books, but when the pandemic started, we decided to do a brand new episode every single week. And so we've expanded what we mean by book to mean literally any literary source. So any movie that's been adapted from a literary source, whatever it is, magazine article, a play, I don't know,
Song.
television commercial, a song. We will consider it. We will consider doing it. And it also means that we're always looking for suggestions. So if you've recently joined us and you're wondering, I wonder if they did this, I wonder if they did that. First of all, we've been doing this for 9 years, so there's a good chance we have. Secondly, one of our listeners, Thaddeus, made an index of all of the episodes that we've ever done. And you can see that index in our Facebook group and also meet other listeners of the podcast and interact with us, make your suggestions and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, we do have a basic Facebook page. Be sure to like it. For some reason, the episodes just post there first. So we do have a private Facebook group. You type in Book vs. Movie Podcast group in Facebook and ask to join. We really do just talk about the episodes and books and movies ideas. We have that pinned up there, Thaddeus's post for us, which we really appreciate. On Instagram and Twitter, we're at Book versus a Movie. Spell that all out. We also have an old-timey email, bookversusmoviepodcast@gmail.com. Send us your suggestions for books, movies. And the thing that we have to ask is that the source has to be easy for us to get our hands on, and the movie needs to be on a major streaming app. So if we have to buy a DVD off of eBay, it's just not going to work. Those are the big places. Also, if you would like some stickers, Margot, I went a little sticker crazy. I forgot. I got clear stickers.
I love those.
To you. Yep. So we've got lots and lots of stickers. We've had lots and lots of new people. So if you're interested, please send us an email. We will drop them in the mail for you wherever you are on the planet of Earth.
Yeah, we really appreciate you guys tuning in and listening in and participating in our virtual book club of the air. If you are wondering, like again, if you're one of our newer listeners and you're wondering, like, where can I hear you? See that index, and you're like, where's that episode? A lot of them are on Patreon, which is where you can join and help support us and keep this podcast. We're not getting rich off of this. We're just keeping the lights on and keeping the books coming to our respective homes. But we appreciate all of you who join us on Patreon.
Yeah, we have a new member, Jenny, and she actually said, Margot, thank you for the card. I think there was an avocado card that you sent to her. Yeah, she loved it.
Well, California.
Right? I'm in Brooklyn. She's in, by the way, both named Margot in case this is new for you. Yes, Patreon. We have about 200 episodes up there. We've been doing the show, like Margot said, for 9 years. We're putting everything from 2020 and then previous to that up on the wall. It's going to be 2021 soon. So we're trying to keep a 2-year deck of shows that'll always be available for you. Now, if you go to that Patreon wall, you can just look around in there. There's a bunch of stuff there that's free because it's like the old stuff. So maybe there's an old recording. You're like, maybe you should redo that. Check it out. We really appreciate it. Patreon. We have a couple of very affordable options, and literally it's for the books and the movies and like the software to put the show together. We are not paying our mortgages with it. We will someday, we hope, but that is the truth. But if money is tight, if you could do us a favor and wherever you get your podcasts, however they have you rate shows, if it's like hitting a button for stars or swiping it or whatever, or leaving a review, that would be amazing. We haven't had an iTunes review in a while. So if you leave us a 5-star review in iTunes, we'll mention you on the air and we'll both be very grateful. Or ask for a sticker, put on your laptop, go to the coffee shop. Lots of you show us your laptops on with our stickers on it. We think that's really cool. Or tell a friend about the show, or like Tony, who bought my book in Nova Scotia. He went to a local person, his local bookstore, and then told him about our show, and now they're following us. Right?
That's amazing. Thank you.
Yes.
We really, I can't, it's hard for me to, it sounds corny when I talk about it, but it just means so much to us.
Right.
So if you've been a listener for a while, then you may have heard us talk about, well, you certainly have heard us talk about today's director, and you may have heard us talk about today's author. We are dipping into the rich well that is Steven Spielberg, and our author too. We've talked about Richard Matheson before, but for those of you who are new, maybe you don't know who Richard Matheson is, you are definitely aware of his work. So much of his work is just a part of popular American culture that it's like one of those things that people don't even know what the source is, including today's story. But let's talk about some of Richard Matheson's most famous works and a little bit about the man himself.
He was born in New Jersey, 1926. He was a Brooklyn boy. He was raised in Brooklyn and went to high school and college out in Brooklyn. He's a very prolific, like Margot said, science fiction writer, horror writer. He wrote a lot of screenplays. He wrote a lot of teleplays for Twilight Zone, Alfred Hitchcock Presents, The Man at 10,000 Feet. Is that it?
That's just like the best Twilight Zone episode ever. It's the one with Captain Kirk and the weird creature out on the wing of the airplane.
It's still scary.
It's still so scary.
It's still as crazy as it is. It's still really scary. He also wrote I Am Legend, which we covered. I'm sure that's on the Patreon wall by now. There's the Omega Man. There's the Pit and the Pendulum.
Another favorite of mine, The Incredible Shrinking Man. I love that movie.
There's also Bid Time Return, which is somewhere in time. We've been asked that one a bunch of times, and I'd love to do that one day.
That's him too.
And then there was the What Dreams May Come True, which is one of the saddest movies I ever saw in my life. But he was very, very prolific, being my point, and is an inspiration to a lot of other writers, such as Stephen King. And he also is, Steven Spielberg was a big fan of his work because he would always check who were the writers on all these shows that he loved. So today's story is something that is based on a true story in his life, true-ish.
True-ish.
He was playing, it was November 22nd, 1963. And if you're wondering if that date sounds notable, that is the date of John F. Kennedy's assassination in Dallas, Texas. He was our president. And it happened like 1 or 2 in the afternoon, if I remember from all those news clips. Richard Matheson was at the golf club with a buddy of his. They were just playing around, and then they hear that the president was shot, and they said, we better go home, and so he and his friend were driving home, and they were all, listening to the radio and sad. And then all of a sudden, a truck started tailgating them. And he did it for miles. And I don't know if you've ever been chased by another car. I have a couple of times.
Oh, yes. I mean, I live in California. If you live
Right.
in California, it's bound to happen sooner or later because they're just wackos out there.
Wackos, angry people, dudes just looking for dates. Like, this is not a way to do it, by the way. I mean, but it's happened, and it's always terrifying and it's scary. And I can only imagine on a date like that, when it always, you're wondering what's going to happen to the world. The president just
And you're
was
already
killed.
feeling like super vulnerable
Right.
and scared and uncertain. And then this guy shows up. Ugh.
Yeah. So they basically, they got away from this trucker, and I don't know how they did, but they did. And then he said, this would be a great story. That's the way he processed it. And it is a great story. So he pitched it to Twilight Zone. He pitched it to a whole bunch of other places. And Alfred Hitchcock presents. He wanted to make a series out of it. No one would do it. They were just like, no. It's I don't know why. So he said, fine.
Well, I can sort of understand why, because just on the surface of it, and I mean, like talking about this movie, which we'll discuss shortly, but I mean, this is here's the movie. You go to pitch the movie. So here's what it is a guy, a salesman is traveling. He's on a car trip to his next client, and a truck is tailgating him, and they keep passing each other, and that goes on for 90 minutes. The end.
Yeah. And then like in the end.
It sounds so dumb.
Right. And they almost always filmed at studios. They didn't film on location very often. The
That's
budget.
the other thing. Yes. Right. Nobody wants to be out in the desert shooting cars and trucks
It's
for days and days
expensive.
on end.
You don't know what the weather's going to be like. You have to have really good drivers. It's got to, there's a lot that are like, well, how are you going to sustain a story? This is 5 years before there's Jaws. So they don't understand what they have here. Steven Spielberg is our director, and with the story, he published it in April of 1971 in Playboy magazine. And what happens is Steven Spielberg is 24 years old.
Yeah. Reading Playboy for the articles.
Right. Well, his assistant did. His assistant did. And she said, I got a story for you. He goes, really? And she goes, no. There's a short story in here. You really need this. And it turns out ABC had bought the property, and then they were already putting it in cycle to put it in as a TV movie. So it's about October when this happens that Spielberg says, well, I want that gig. And he calls his agent. He calls everybody he knows. He'd done some television. Like I said, he had a Columbo that I haven't even, it was the first Columbo that hadn't even aired yet. That was like
really?
Right.
Oh, I didn't know it was the first one.
It was the first
one. Night Gallery is wonderful.
With Joan Crawford, which is, amazing. And we talked about Spielberg in that episode. There's actually one we did just about talk about Steven Spielberg, and that's on our Patreon page if you want to hear that. Anyway, so he takes that, he asks around, and then somebody finally says, okay, can you do it in 10 days? And he's like, sure, because that's what you say. You just want the gig. It's baffling.
I know it's just a car chase that goes on for 90 minutes, but how did they shoot it in that short of a time?
Well, I
don't get it.
It was 73 minutes then, because it was a 90-minute TV movie in November, and it was on a Saturday night. And back then, and we've talked about this before, TV movies in the 70s and 80s got huge ratings.
Big deal. Yeah.
They were a big deal. There was always like they used to be like the movie of the week, and then it was the Monday movie of the week, and then it was the Monday and the Wednesday movie of the week.
It was exactly like how Netflix produces things today. So
Right.
it was big budget that the networks, and there were only 3 of them at the time,
right,
that they would devote to these movies. And yeah, you would stay in and watch the movie of the week.
It was a Saturday night. I mean, that's what you never think people program Saturday nights now, but that people used to do that because people would stay home and then they needed something to watch. So it's this movie that comes out in November. It's about a month before his 25th birthday. He had 10 days to do it. He said, okay, but we have to be on site. We have to actually be on roads. And they said, what are you, nuts? And he says, no, this is really the difference it makes. So he gets them to commit to 10 days doing it on the road. He hires 2 of the best stunt drivers in the business to be
the driving in this movie.
Incredible.
Seriously, like, and we did a while back, the Fast and the Furious, which is like now the gold standard of driving movies, but this is really impressive.
Yes. He has, so he hires Dennis Weaver, and I remember he was in McCloud. That was a show my mom would watch. Do you remember that?
That's what I was trying to remember. Like, what is that show? I remember he had like turtlenecks and, McCloud.
Cowboy boots, and he was in the city. Like, that was his whole thing. My mom, like, had such a crush on him. She watched every week. Steven Spielberg picked him because he had seen his performance in Touch of Evil, which is an Orson Welles production.
That's what it's called, yes.
I always forget he's in Touch of Evil, which is one of my favorite movies. But he has...
It's a great movie.
He plays this very scared, flibberty-gibbet of a guy, like a person. And so Steven...
It's not McCloud.
It's not McCloud. He's not cool and
No.
calm. He's trying to... The whole thing with the character is that his name is Man in the story. We never see the truck driver. We don't know what he looks like. And the whole thing is that they're chasing each other down the east, and he cannot shake this guy. He goes into a diner and he shows up there. He goes slower. The truck goes slower. He goes faster. The truck goes faster. It's always finding him. And then he has to basically come up with a way to have the truck go over a cliff. And then there's a big explosion because also on the truck it says flammable. And he's always scared. What if it just blows up in front of me?
Yeah. Yeah. Or what if I rear end this guy? Kablooey, right?
Right.
And the story, it's so well written.
Right. It's really good.
Really, the writing is so awesome. As someone who spends a lot of time on California roads. Right. He really captures that the way it's so weird. You do these long haul drives, which I hate myself, but I've done so many of them in my life. Yeah. You're on these drives and the challenge is always like, I got to keep my eyes on the road, even if there's nobody around, because who knows, some bird or some deer or something's going to run out on the road.
Yep.
But also your mind is wandering because it's so freaking boring. Right. And so I love the way he captures the driver Man, his mind. He's a salesman. So he's thinking about like, oh, I got to land this client or my boss is going to like really be after me. Oh, look at those houses there. Why, who would live out here? I can't imagine. Oh, look, they've got a pet cemetery. That's awfully sweet. Yeah. Oh my gosh, there's that truck again. I love the way that he writes that. It's so natural sounding. That's how you experience being behind the wheel on these long haul drives. And if you have done these long haul drives, then you certainly have had these awful situations of trucks menacing you on the road. I don't know how else to put it.
Right. Well, a lot of truck
drivers.
Not all truck drivers, but a lot of truck drivers. It's a profession where they have to be up sometimes for several days on little
so
sleep.
Hard.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And they have to, and some of them, oh God, the ones with like the 2 or 3 trailers behind them.
I could never do it. I just don't have the nerves.
No.
But it's hard. It's a very difficult job.
They're just trying to get one place to the other because that's how they make their living. And they don't have a lot of patience for slow people or anything.
Which I understand.
Which I get.
Now, there's some differences between the story and the movie, which we'll talk about. But there's one really chilling scene in the story that I'm not sure is in the movie, or if it is, I don't remember it. Mm-hmm. One of the things that's really makes both versions extremely suspenseful is that you never see the driver of the truck.
Right.
It never happens. And the other thing that I think is it's a little bit different. You don't get this in the movie at all, I don't think. At first, when Man, the salesman, is driving, he passes the truck, which is what you do. He passes the truck, and then the truck whizzes by him. He's like, whoa, okay, maybe I misread that situation, is his first thought. And so then pretty soon he comes up and he's behind the truck again, and the truck is crawling along. And so it's safe. He checks to make sure it's safe. he passes the truck again. And this time he passes the truck, and this happens in the movie, the truck goes wah, wah, like really long as he's passing him. And this isn't in the movie, but man in the story is like, oh, I wonder if he's saying hello.
Right.
What a nice guy. Yeah.
He's just wondering, he's
assuming the best.
Right. And then there's some
guy.
point where, like you said, that we don't see him. We don't know what he looks like. He just sees a tan arm on the left side.
He just sees his arm. It's very important.
Right.
Yeah.
Because at one point, the arm
go ahead.
waves at him. Like, okay.
Waves him like, hey, it's safe for you to pass.
Which I've done before. Have you? I mean,
so have I.
Yes. They're like, we can't keep, here's a solid. Here you go. You're free to go. So you're like, thank you. And he says, okay. And then he takes off. And then that's when another car is coming right at him that he couldn't see in the first place. So he almost took out not only him, but this other. And then he's going, what is going on here?
Then he realizes this guy was just trying to kill me. Yeah.
And this other person didn't care if this other person was killed.
Yeah. Which is perfectly willing to sacrifice these other people in the car. And then he realizes what he's dealing with. He's trapped in the car. It's so interesting. And Steven Spielberg, we'll talk about the movie, but one of the things that is so cool about this story, and Matheson is so, like, I Am Legend is a lot like this too. As this man is in this situation and the pressure is mounting and mounting and mounting, and they have the scene where they go to the cafe and he's trying to figure out which one is the driver, and he's wrong every time. And there's this point where I think that's where it starts to really shift. So he's in the cafe, he's trying to work out which one is the driver, and each time he's wrong. And while he's trying to figure it out, the truck starts taking off, and he's like, oh my gosh, I totally missed who the driver is. And now the truck is going. And he goes out and he's running after this semi truck, which is ridiculous, right? And at this point, like, he starts to really become unhinged, our driver, the salesman. And as the chase is continuing and it's getting really dangerous, it's getting just increasingly more dangerous. This truck is really messing with this guy. The salesman is starting to he's starting to lose his sense of what the right thing is to do, really, in this situation, there are certain points that we're just get out of the car, dude. Just get out of the car. Just run. What is he going to, he's not going to get out. He can't quickly get out of this giant truck easily, clearly. Yeah. Get out of the car and call the cops. But he's like, no, I can't get out of the car no matter what happens. And then the car starts to fail. It starts to overheat, which was a thing you used to see all the time. Remember in the 70s?
I had a car that did that in the 90s.
I can't tell you how many times before, like, 1995, I'd been in an overheating car.
Yes,
remember you had to pull over.
Oh yeah,
you couldn't the thing off.
You couldn't use the air conditioner because that was taking up too much power.
Turn on the heat. Even it doesn't matter how hot it is. Yeah.
Oh, you're bringing back so many memories.
Right? It was so horrible.
Oh, it was horrible. It was so horrible.
It happened all the time, you guys.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. Yeah, exactly. So this is driving and also I know what it's like because I lived in Northern California. I went to college in Northern California. Margot's from Southern California. I've driven to LA and back. That's from San Francisco.
Yeah, there's lots of stretches like that.
Lots of stretches where it's just like people say field, 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 and then there's a house, and then field, field, field. And if you go on 101, it's really beautiful, but it takes you a lot longer. So it's Highway 5. But that's a highway. He's on a he's on a highway. He's not on a freeway. A freeway
yes, exactly.
has
He's not on
lanes.
The freeway. He's on the highway like the PCH or something like that. In the story. In the movie, it's a little bit different, and we'll talk about that. But
right. Which he regrets.
Yeah, he's like, becoming he's becoming unhinged. Like he's not making sense. Like he really thinks even as the car is failing around him, he's like, I can't leave this car. I can't get out of the car. If I get out of the car, he's going to get me, which is like, you need to, dude, get out of the car. But he's lost his grip.
Yeah.
And Matheson is so amazing at, as taking you on step by step on how that can happen when you're in this crazy pressure, mortal danger situation. And then, spoiler alert, just like in the movie, he swerves, although it's not, no, in neither case is it planned. It just happens that he swerves, he loses control of the car, and the truck is so trained on him that it goes off of a cliff before it can stop itself,
Right.
and explodes because it's full of flammable liquid. And even then, our salesman, he's really lost his grip on things, and he can't even he's basically reduced to just like your most primal lizard brain, of just like, I survived, yippee, and that's how the story ends. It's such a simple idea,
Right.
but it is such a gripping, well-written, just like you have this whole, it's all about the inside of this salesman's mind the whole time. And it is riveting. It's awesome.
And it's a short story. I mean,
it's very short. Yeah.
I got it through Libby, my Libby app. My library had it. There's audiobooks. I listened to an audio reading of it. It's only an hour, but it's really, really interesting. And it's incredibly well done. And like you said, this is a great idea for a story. And it gets picked up by ABC. So like we said, ABC a couple of nights a week had these TV movies, and they got monster ratings. So they would sell. But I didn't realize they would film them so close to when they were expected to air. Like,
I was surprised about that too.
Oh
that seems
God.
so risky, doesn't it?
It
What if
does.
something goes wrong? What if you have a freak thunderstorm like we've been having here lately? What do you do?
What do you do? I don't know, but it's November 20th is the date it has to be released. So it's like a month out that he's filming this. And he actually had to take an extra 3 days, which he thought was going to get him fired, because they were really on his case. Like, you need to get this in on time. So Steven Spielberg said, okay, but we need to film it outside. I need Dennis Weaver. And then I have these 2 stunt drivers that I want to work with. And then one of the Duel extras, like they had a DVD extra that I saw on YouTube, is Steven Spielberg said that he was so young that most of the crews were filled with people, even in television, that had been in the business for like 30, 40 years.
What a blessing.
Right. And he's in charge on the set. But these
So
people
laughable.
really know what they do, what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So
you can tell.
And he wants to learn, because he wanted to do Sugarland Express, which was one of his ideas, and that's coming out, and that's in a couple of years. So there's all this pressure on him, and he said, I was so young and so ambitious. I didn't care how many hours it took me every day. I was gonna do it. And so he hired the truck like you would hire an actor. Like, they looked at all these different trucks. He decided a thing he did in television that was different from a lot of people is that he did wide shots. That was like one of his calling cards. Like, he was the new kid, and now he was using TV this way. And so he wanted to have a red car and a red truck because they would stick out. And so the brighter red car belongs to Dennis Weaver, and then the red truck is the red truck. But they also, with the truck, they just made it look janky. They like put all kinds of oil and dirt and dust all over it. Plus, they added these license plates on the very front of it. How does this guy run around with like 12 license plates on the front of his car?
Oh, no, that's how they used to have.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know why, because I don't understand about like trucking. But I remember, because again, I had so many of these long road trips as a child. You have a lot of time to like look at the trucks.
That's all
and
we
stuff.
did when we were taking vacations. We were driving I wasn't on a plane until I was like 16.
I don't understand it. And I mean, I know gas was cheap, but the cars were like, half a mile a gallon. But trucks would be registered in multiple states.
Oh, that makes
sense. If they were doing interstate trucking, you would have like Nevada, and it was usually like the Southwest, Nevada, Arizona, Colorado, California. And that's something that the story points out too, that the truck, which I think is supposed to tell us that this is a driver who does like super long haul trucking. So this is his domain.
Well, also, Steven Spielberg said it's also the sign that he's like a serial killer, because he thinks those license plates come from the victims that he's. That's what Spielberg said.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, interesting.
So that I was like, ooh, yes, it's a good juicy detail. So why don't we do this? Why don't we take a quick break? We'll play the ABC promo video. It was like a little commercial they would put out to get you to want to watch the movie. And then we'll talk about this movie.
Well, it's about time, Charlie. You want me to hit that car head on.
Dennis Weaver.
Okay, Jack, I've had it. Why? Why is he doing this?
Duel.
We should also say that Richard Matheson wrote the screenplay with Steven Spielberg. So it's his story that he's continuing. And he'd written several teleplays before, so that's nothing new for him. And they have Carrie Lofton is the truck driver, and he's sort of the main stunt guy. And Steven Spielberg uses all these tricks to make this gigantic truck look like it can go fast. There's all these little tricks of camera.
Yeah, let's be clear. It cannot
go 70 or like whatever it's doing in this movie.
Yeah, it goes in the story. The truck is going like 70, which in those today sounds like, well, what's the problem then? But in those days, that was a big deal. If you were trying to outrun a truck that was going 70 miles an hour for a sustained period of time, yes, your car would overheat.
Yes, your car would overheat. So Dennis Weaver. We should also say is that there's two different versions. The original TV version was about 73 minutes because it was from like I think 8:30 to 10 or whatever on a Saturday night. So it was only under 90 minutes, and the rest I guess was all ads, but
commercials,
all commercials. So it's not even that long. It was like 70 minutes. I think he said it was the final, and it becomes this huge hit. I mean, we have Dennis Weaver in the extended version, which is what you see now, is the version that Spielberg, the movie becomes a hit, and they're actually going to show it in Europe on real screens because it was that successful. He had no idea it would happen. But so then he had to come up with 10 extra minutes. And so they threw in cursing and they threw in a couple of scenes that we'll talk about. But it's Richard, he starts the show, it's David Mann, and it starts with him. He's on the road and Dennis Weaver calls his wife. He looks very handsome in this movie, by the way.
He's very handsome in the movie. He starts out, like when we first see him, first of all, he's got a slick car, right? Because he's a salesman. He can't show up in a jalopy. Nobody's going to hire him or give him their account. Kind of like how I was talking about my dad in the Mercedes last week. Yeah. So he has kind of a slick little car. And he stops at basically like a rest stop. It's like a trucking rest stop. And if you've ever been, again, if you've ever done long haul drives and you've ever been in a trucker rest stop, it's not just gas and Kit Kats. You can get a shower there. It's got microwaves. You can heat stuff up. You can buy shaving cream and deodorant. You can get breakfast, lunch, dinner. You can do your laundry there, right? So he gets off at the truck stop. He goes to the payphone. He's calling his wife. As he's talking to her, and we'll talk about their conversation in a minute, which I think is really key. Really key to this guy's character. This woman comes in to get her laundry out of the machine in a Vera Newman sundress that I just want to reach into the screen and rip off her body. I want this dress. I remember this dress from the 70s. I was like, oh, that's the dress. I love that dress. I want her dress. But anyway.
It had pockets.
It had pockets.
It's pockets. And on a hot day, it was like nice and cool. It was enough to cover your body, but it was like, especially the summer in California can last a really long time.
Oh, yeah. So let's talk about where the film is shot before we get to this.
Because this is your expertise.
This is my area that I happen to know very well. So we are east of Oxnard, California, which is the subject of my book, Growing Up in La Colonia. But we're out by Santa Clarita. What is that one? Acosta? Is that what that place is called? These are inland, in not just rural, but it's even east of the agriculture. It's pretty far. We're going into the desert. It's between the rich agricultural part of California and the desert. who is he meeting out there? Like, who is this client? I don't know. He's not going to San Francisco, is what I'm saying.
Right.
He's going towards Arizona. But the plus thing is that you have all of these. It's all even today. It's all 2-lane highways. A lot of it is 2-lane highways, and you have these remote stretches like this where, yeah, you could shut it down and film an ABC movie of the week pretty easily there. It is very hot. It is quite dry. He leaves his home. I don't understand that. That's the one little nitpicky thing about this movie, and it's dumb because he lives in Los Angeles, right? He lives in kind of a nice house. We see at the beginning of the movie. I like the beginning of the movie. He drives through downtown Los Angeles, and then which I like too. Very fun to see LA as I remember it from my childhood, and drives east. I want to say also, before we go on, that we've talked about Steven Spielberg so many times on this podcast.
And we will.
And we will continue to, because he is the master. We have said it before. We will say it again. He is the master of the film adaptation. He can take a crappy story with a good little nugget like a killer shark and turn it into one of the greatest movies of all time. Now, in this case, he has a great story, that he's starting with and adapting. But even at this very, very, very young age, he has such a keen sense of using, what did we call that? Showing, not telling. So using the visuals to tell the story, to fill in, give us some clues about who we're talking about and what's happening. So he has we see his safe little suburban home, which is very like just perfect little Americana.
Which reminds me,
go ahead.
Of Poltergeist. Like he does a California suburb.
Same. Yes, exactly. But he's so good at this. And I love like every time, not just that they're on the road and the remoteness of it. And you can't help but think of the Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote. But when every little stop that he makes, when he stops at Chuck's Cafe, which is in the story, that scene is in the story. The scene with the school bus with the kids. It's such a great scene. That's not in the story. That's all Spielberg. It's brilliant. Because again, it just gives us more about who this man is. And we can kind of understand a little bit about why he's reacting the way that he is. And then, of course, my favorite scene, which is at the Snake-a-rama. Come on, Snake-a-rama.
Now, is the woman that runs the Snake-a-rama, was she in Bosom Buddies?
Yes.
Yes. I love her.
She was in a lot of things in the 70s. Yeah, she's a wonderful character actress. And she really sells, my snakes.
My snakes. Can I check your oil for you? Okay. She's so cheerful.
And the gas station. Anyway, so we'll talk about all these scenes. So we're just at the beginning of the movie, and he gets, and this scene I think is one of the auxiliary scenes that Spielberg has shot. So what I'm saying is all this extra stuff that could be so tacked on. He could have just like, okay, fine. Like here's some more scenes of him driving in the desert. But he really adds to the story, adds to the richness of the characters with this extra stuff that he shot. So we have our salesman. He's just about to get onto a stretch where, when you're on a road trip, you're like, okay, this is our last stop for, 4 hours or whatever it's going to be. The last sign of civilization. Yeah. So it's one of those places. And he gets off to place a call to his wife, and it's to apologize. Because we again, show don't tell. They're talking around what happened. Apparently, they were at a party, and a man at the party, maybe a colleague, maybe a superior of this guy, was really getting handsy and crossing some lines with Mr. Man's wife, Mr. Salesman's wife. What does Mr. Salesman do about it at the party?
Nothing.
She
says to him, he basically raped me, which she's just saying, like you said, super handsy. I mean, maybe he was leaning in for a kiss or he had his arms around her. We've all been in those situations. And he's like, you want your husband. I mean, for me, it's the cave woman. I want him to really kind of handle the guy and be like, hey, get away from my wife. That's not cool. And he didn't do anything. And so she's saying to him, And then Steven Spielberg also has a lot of movies where the fathers are ineffectual, where the fathers are
This is true.
are kind of a mess. And when we learn his biography, we're like, he is very much talking about his own dad and his relationship to his dad. And so here's a dad that's like, he's not sticking up for his spouse. And it could be, like you said, probably a boss or somebody, it's one of his clients and he doesn't want to upset them. So she has to put up with the crap and has to understand that. And she's saying, no, that's not okay.
We also see in the shot, because we see her in the house. Again, the very, very nice middle-class house. We also see that he has a son, which is kind of an interesting little angle. He has a son who's there with a friend, I think, because those two boys look like they're the same age, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, he is the male role model, and he's being called out for not modeling very good behavior. But he's calling to apologize. Like as he's been driving, he's kind of ruminating. He's listening to the talk radio, and he realizes, like, oh man, yeah, I didn't handle that right. So he calls to apologize. Good on him.
Yes.
Yeah.
And also, you should listen. I have to watch everything with the captions now because I blew out my hearing at 90s rock concerts, Lollapalooza and all. Anyway, so when I watched it again this time, I really listened to the radio that he's listening to. And it's a goofy radio guy that's basically calling somebody and saying, like, I'm supposed to be the head of the house, but actually my wife is the boss. And I think he's talking to a census worker or something like that. And that's the whole goof. Like, I could see that on the screen. And Dennis is laughing. And then he realizes, like, I had a fight with my wife too. And she's really the boss. I really should just apologize and tell her I feel bad about it. And so so like, once again, like, is he an effectual guy? Does he tend to, who's in charge? Is he the boss, or is his boss the boss of him and his wife is the boss of him? Right. So, like, how much can he control? And
exactly, how much can he control? And the other thing that it made me think of is, having had all of that, now he's getting back on the road. I don't remember if we have seen the truck driver yet at that point.
No.
It's been, yeah. First of all, and I should say, we don't even see our salesman until 5.5 minutes in. We're just seeing what he sees for those first 5.5 minutes. So, I live in San Diego. One of the things about San Diego is that we have, like, every branch of the military is here, because of, being a port city and whatnot. And so this is where specifically I live, where all of the recruits are sent to train. Like, a lot of training stations are near me. I don't think the naval one is there anymore, but we have Camp Pendleton. I live very close to the Marine recruitment depot. I have all my life. And one of the things about that place is that you have they are kids, they are teenagers, these young men, and they haven't had their training yet. And they're probably scared. They're in California. They've never been to California before. Always, what I'm getting at is you see their license plates, like, oh, this one's from Oklahoma, this one's from Colorado, whatever. They drive like maniacs in all of the neighborhoods that surround the Marine recruitment. They always have. Like, I don't remember a time when this was not the case. Because being behind the wheel, this is the only thing that the little place that they have they feel like they have some kind of domain. And so they will menace you on the road. Like, dude, we're in there's a school right there. We're all supposed to be going 25 miles an hour. And you're, like, on my butt, like, honking and revving. But it is this, like, at the same time, you're like, oh, like, you poor thing. I'm sorry that this is all you have,
right?
To that's within your control right now. It must be really hard. I really feel for them.
It's an American thing too, though.
It is.
It's a very American thing, because I live in New York. I haven't had a car in like 20 years, but I know how to drive. And when I lived in California, there's been many, many times where I've go on road trips, and it's how we get around. And there is a car culture in America, and a part of that is independence. It's about. And I remember, especially when I was a teenager, when I got my driver's license, like, to be able to go away for a while.
I mean, that's how they sell it to us. That's how they get out of paying for public transportation.
Yes, you know what? You're right.
But yeah, so it is this trope, I'm going to say, I guess, of, the man who feels the toxic masculinity of, I don't have control over anything in my life. I'm going to take it out on the road. And both of the men in this story are going through that, but to varying degrees of tenability. So we set this up, and now we have our salesman behind the wheel. He's coming up on this slow, rickety old looking semi truck. I mean, this thing looks like it's been back and forth across the country like 25 times at this point. And so he does what you would do. The road is straight. There is nobody else on it. He passes the truck. He doesn't do the thing in the story where he thinks like, oh, I guess, oh, hi, Mr. Truck Driver. Like he doesn't, he just is, this is something that he deals with all the time. This is part of his job. He's just what he does. But let me tell you, this is not in the story. I mean, they talk about it in the story. When you see it on the movie, it's much scarier. When he's past the truck, he's driving, and then the truck goes zoom and passes him. It's so scary. Like you're instantly like, that's not right. That's not how you do the thing on the road. That's not how we do. It's so scary right away. It's so tense. How does it sustain being so tense for so long? I do not know.
It's the music.
But it does it so well. The music is awesome.
Jerry
just like the whole
Goldsmith.
thing. The cinematography, the angles, the times that they go in on Dennis Weaver's face and the times that you're seeing the kind of a long shot of his whole body sitting in the car versus the long shot of the car and the truck together. Just the interplay of that is done in such an exciting, dramatic way that you are riveted. It is a hour and a half car chase, and I am here for it.
Right. I should say that it's Billy Goldenberg is the composer. He would go on to use John Williams as his main composer. But I was thinking this is like, when I'm watching this movie, I'm like, the use of sound in this film is excellent. That is what it sounds like to be in a car. That's what it sounds like when a truck passes you for real. That's what it sounds like when you're at a train station and the thing comes down. That's what it sounds like when you go into a diner that's in the middle of nowhere. Like that's the kind of music you hear. That's the chatter that you hear. There's all of it is so realistic that adds to so you relate to it.
You really relate to this guy right away. And it's that phone call that really pulls you in with this guy. Like, oh, look at him. Like, he's really trying.
He's trying.
Yeah, he's trying. He lives in this very toxic masculinity world, but there's a guy in there, and yeah, he's a good guy. And you don't want this to happen to him, but here he is. And just like in the book, that whole thing about Chuck's Cafe, which is a real restaurant in Santa Clarita, it's a French restaurant now, and it is kind of remote like that even today. The truck really, really gets very dangerous as they're approaching that Chuck's Cafe, and the car spins out. And I think this for me, like, this is where we really see Dennis Weaver's character start to go off the rails. When he hurts his neck, like, I so buy that this man has really hurt his neck. All attempts to look macho and cool out the window.
Right.
He really is in pain. It's so
and
well
he's
done.
terrified. He's just completely
really
terrified.
scared.
And he can't make sense of it. So he goes into I love it when he goes into the diner, like I said, and you just hear the sounds and everything. And he does that movie thing where he goes in and he puts cold water on his face, trying to like shock himself. And then and normally we don't like interior monologues, but this is really done well because he has nobody to talk to.
He has nobody to talk to. And the story in the book it's all interior monologue.
Do you have an aspirin?
Oh, your headaches. Sure, I'll get you some.
I don't know. All I did was pass this stupid rig a couple of times and he goes flying off the deep end. He has to be crazy. Okay, so he's crazy. What can I do about it? Find him a psychiatrist? Oh, boy.
There's no other way. You really, I think if he had not done it, it would have been just. But I also appreciate when he does it, because up until now we've seen him talk on the phone to his wife. We've seen him talk to the gas station attendant. I don't think we've gotten to Snake-O-Rama just yet. He's talking back and forth to the radio like you do to stay awake on the road, but this is the first point. And again, the Chuck's Cafe is a real critical point in the book as well, where he starts to lose his grip at Chuck's Cafe. And so to introduce this interior monologue at that point, I think is the perfect, when else are you going to do it?
Right.
It's done very well.
So he orders a cheese sandwich, Swiss cheese on rye, RYE. Okay.
Okay.
And she's like, all right. And he had gone to the bathroom and he's looking, and all he knows about the driver is that he's probably white. He kind of saw the arm, and that he has blue jeans and cowboy boots on. That's about all he knows. And you're at a truck stop in that part of California.
That's everybody.
That's everyone. That's
the cook.
The chef,
everyone.
It's every truck driver that's going through that town. And he's sitting there and he does this so well. Every person could be guilty. Every person could be that guy. You're just, is that the one? Is that the one? Is that
so
the
now he's starting to become paranoid.
Yes.
A terror at 20,000 feet kind of moment. And yeah, he realizes like any one of these men, because the truck is across the street. He sees the truck is there, and he can see at this point that the driver is not in the truck. So there's nothing else. There's no place else for the driver to be but in here with me. So one of these guys is just trying to kill me.
And is waiting for me to be done and then going to come out and kill me. So do I sit here forever? What do I do?
So what do I do?
Right. And so he orders the cheese sandwich. He's trying to eat. He's trying to drink. He's drinking all the water. He's so nervous.
I'm so sorry for him. I know.
He does. It's such a good performance. Like it's
such an amazing performance.
It really is, because he gets that paranoia, and you can't look like that in that kind of place where they're used to regulars and people who come in all the time. Like he really stands out. And he's
not a jaded truck driver. He is a ruffled salesman, with his little, probably clip-on tie, with his all dressed up to impress the potential client with his little sports car. And he is just coming unhinged.
Right.
I love that scene. I don't think that scene is in the book where he goes and confronts, like he tries to deduce which one it is.
No, it's
and he
not.
thinks it's this guy.
Oh
and,
my
and so he
God.
goes and confronts him.
That whole scene.
Look, I want you to cut it out.
What?
Just cut it out, okay?
For what?
Now, come on, I mean, please, let's not play games.
What the hell are you talking about?
I can call the police.
Police?
You think that I won't? You're wrong, mister. If you think you can take that truck of yours and just use it as a murder weapon, just killing people on the highway, well, you're wrong. You've got another thing coming.
Yeah, you need help.
Don't you tell me I need help.
Hey! Hey! Come on!
Who the hell do you think you are knocking my son?
Come on! Now you want to fight? Get on outside!
I don't want to friend Nick.
All right.
Head off.
Come on, you already hit him twice now. What more do you want, huh? Huh? Come on now, look at him. He's sick. Can't you see you're gonna fight no one?
That creep comes around and acts like sandwiches.
All right. I'll buy you another sandwich. Now, come on, forget it.
No, forget it.
Forget it.
Stay around.
Let me buy you a beer, then, huh? I'll buy you a beer. Why don't you get out of here, huh?
Because at 2 seconds in, I'm like, oh, that's not the guy. That's not how he would react. That's not. I mean, I did
No,
anyway.
you could tell by his reaction, like, this guy's not bluffing. Like, he really doesn't know what you're talking about.
He's
dude.
eating a burger with his left hand and a drink in the right hand. They're like the whole time, like just back and forth. So Dennis Weaver, he thinks he might be a driver, but then it's a really good visual trick. He's like walking to another truck, and so he doesn't know. So he leaves. He goes on the road, and this man is still following him. And there's one point where he thinks he eludes him, and then he shows up again. There's a point where he sees, like we said, there was a scene with a bus driver with school children.
Right. Okay. So in the story, as we said, in the book, there's this very scary scene where the truck driver waves him over like, "You're good to go, dude." And then is actually setting him up to die by running into oncoming traffic and killing these innocent people. In the movie, we have this extra scene that's not in the book though, but it has a similar effect where it sort of flips that idea. Dennis Weaver's driving, he sees this broken down school bus. Now he's pulling over, we presume, to ask for help, to be like, "Did you see that truck? You got to help me. This guy's trying to kill me." Da, 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 da. But before he could even get that out, the bus driver's like, "Oh, I'm so glad you're here. You got to help us. You got to give me a push. The bus is overheating and it won't start up again. And I got these kids, and I got to get it back. Da, 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 da. You got to help me. You got to help me, dude." And Dennis Weaver's like, I think my car's too low. I think my car's just going to go under your bus. He's like, no, you're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. And of course, that's what happens. But Dennis Weaver has this urgency, like, we've got to get everybody, especially these kids, we've got to get them out of here because this killer is out there. He's going to try to kill us all. We are all in terrible, terrible danger. But he's not able to push the car because the car gets stuck. They free the car. He's like, "I'm sorry. I try to help. I'll see what I can do." As he takes off, he sees there's the truck coming for the kids. And he's like, "Oh my gosh." And the truck just like slows down and helpfully pushes the school bus.
Right. He's not after them.
He's not after them.
No, he doesn't want them. And he's letting him know, like, "No, I want you. You're my prize.
It's you, dude.
It's
you.
This
really is all about you.
It is you. It's all about you. You want it to be all about you. It's all about you." There's also a scene that they added to the movie where he goes to a train station and the lights are coming down and he's like, "Okay, here comes the train coming by. He's just sitting there. And then right behind him comes the truck and it's pushing him towards this passing train. It's like,
it's so well done.
So well done.
These are the things that have made this movie a part of the American vernacular. You see it, like I said, you see a parody. One of my favorite parodies of this movie is the Bob's Burger Christmas special. Did you ever see that one?
No.
Oh, it's so good. There's a Bob's Burger episode where the family, I forget why, the circumstances, but the family is in a car. They're going home for Christmas, and they get into it with this semi-truck that's shaped like a candy cane. It's this huge, menacing candy cane, and they're like, ah! Yeah, it's totally a takeoff on Duel, but it's so genius the way, as Dennis Weaver is realizing, because there's road rage, and if you're an American, you've experienced road rage. Nowadays, you don't mess with those people because they might have a firearm in the car, and
unfortunately,
so you just hang back and like, okay, it's your road, dude. Go ahead.
Right.
In those days, that was not so much the case. Steven Spielberg is so brilliant he sets up all of these different scenes. There's a scene where a senior kind of elderly couple come in a car, and he flags them down, where he demonstrates like the truck driver doesn't care about these old people in the car. The truck driver doesn't care about the train. The truck driver doesn't care about this kids in the school bus. He just wants you.
Right.
He only wants you. And he doesn't even care about himself. If it means his truck blows up, he kind of doesn't care as long as he gets you, is what we kind of realize, and it just builds and builds and builds. We have the Snake-O-Rama scene. Again, my favorite scene of the whole movie. He gets out, he goes to the phone booth at the Snake-O-Rama, and the lady's like, be sure and check out my snakes.
She's got these snakes. They're in the middle of nowhere. And
I don't understand this. She has snakes in glass vitrines, live snakes, like with the sun blazing down on them for some reason. I don't get that.
And the truck,
but
and
it's
the
very
dog
funny.
that's like chained to the thing, which it's like people used to do that. Like
people did used to do that. That was a thing you saw a lot.
But she says,
and a phone booth
and a
in
phone
the middle
booth.
of the snakes.
and a lot of people wouldn't know what a phone booth is. So he goes he says, does that phone booth work? And she's like, yeah. He goes, it's an odd place for it, because it isn't an odd place. They had to put an odd place because the truck is going to just run it. He's on the phone.
Calling the police,
calling the cops, and the truck comes and just bashes through. And Dennis Weaver did his own stunts. He just jumped out of it.
It's
just
so
in time.
Good.
It's so amazing.
All right. Help you, mister?
Have you got a telephone?
Out and back.
This way?
Something for your car?
Well, you can put what ethyl you can get in the tank.
All righty.
Would you mind checking those radiator hoses?
I'll do that. Take a look at my snakes if you have time.
Weird place for a telephone booth.
Operator.
I'd like to report a truck driver that's been endangering my life.
In that case, I'll have to give you the police, sir.
Right, well, give me the police.
Sir, which department do you want?
Whichever's closer.
What number are you calling from?
This number is 9821.
What's your name, sir?
David Mann.
How do you spell that, please?
M-A-N-N. That's two N's. I'd like to report a truck driver that's been endangering my life.
Your name again?
David Mann.
And the poor snake. And then, of course, the snakes are out. And then there's like a spider crawling up the leg. I mean, it just all goes. And then you can go back to Indiana Jones. There's so many things that like.
So many. It's just so delicious.
Yeah.
So anyway, like I said, Spielberg is just like building and building. Like this truck has a mind of its own. It's not even about the guy in the truck anymore. It's just like this truck is going to get this driver. So that when we get to the point where Dennis Weaver's, and this is my other favorite scene, because I just think he does this so beautifully when his car is starting to overheat. And he's just at this point, he is now just a hunted animal. Mm-hmm. And he can't even have the presence of mind to, again, get out of the freaking car. Get out of the car, dude. Just go and run among the rocks. He can't drive up there. He can't drive up into the rocks. Just get out of the car. He's not getting out of the car. He's screaming and pleading with the car to keep going. It's amazing.
Right.
It's so like, it's so primal, childlike. And again, not based on, he's not thinking clearly at all. He's just begging the car to keep going. Which is what happens in the book too, but Dennis Weaver does it so beautifully. It's so good.
It's great. So finally there is this point where they're by a cliff and he figures out, well, if I pretend that I'm just going to jump over, I'm just going to go
run the car off the cliff.
He'll follow me. And so I just have to jump out in time so that I don't go over with the car. And so it's like, that's the story and that's what's in the movie. Mm-hmm. He sets it up so that he puts his briefcase to put the pedal to the metal and the car goes over. And then, spoiler, the truck goes over, which is what we've been waiting for. And the thing that he doesn't do is he doesn't blow up the truck. The truck just does this tumble. And it makes these sounds, and he uses these sounds in Jaws, and he uses these sounds in Jurassic Park later, where the T-Rex shows up. It's just this jangle
of the giant falling,
right.
Yeah,
and that's what he wanted, and that's all he wanted. You don't get the big explosion. It said flammable this whole time. So you're kind of like, well, what's happening? And Dennis Weaver's just so deliriously happy because finally, And then I'm like, where are you? Who's going to come get you? Like,
He doesn't even know. He doesn't even know where he is. He's in the middle of nowhere.
literally middle of nowhere. No water, no nothing, but he's alive. He vanquished his enemy. He outsmarted him, and maybe this will. Can you imagine these stories at like dinner parties for years? Like he's.
It's so good.
Yeah.
It's such a great movie. I mean, the story is fantastic, which helps, of course. But we really see the really brilliant mind of Steven Spielberg to take the source material and turn it into pictures that tell that story in a way that hook you in and make you think.
Yeah.
But yeah, you think about, like, you can't help but think, like, oh gosh, look, I've been on that road. I've literally been on that literal road. You so connect with this guy. And he does it so well. Like I said, you don't even see Dennis Weaver until 5.5 minutes in. And by the time, you see him for all of like 15 seconds before you are just like in with this guy. You're in with him. This is the guy. All of the I don't want to call them extras, but these additional character actors that we have. That first gas station attendant with the limp.
Yeah.
He's fantastic.
They're all really good.
They're all so good. The waitress at Chuck's Cafe, all of the men in Chuck's Cafe, the old man when the car spins out in front of the cafe that comes out and is like checking on Dennis Weaver to see if he's okay. All of them are so, so good. You just buy that they live in this, they live at Chuck's Cafe or they live at Snake-O-Rama, and you just totally buy every single person in this movie. It's so good.
He used that Snake-O-Rama, the actress who does the Snake-O-Rama stuff. He used her in the movie 1941, which I've never seen. And then the old couple that's in the car that don't get run over, but they take off. He uses them in Close Encounters. There's a scene where they're featured in Close. So he does those. It's Lucille Benson. Sorry. That's the lady at Snake-O-Rama.
My snakes.
My snakes. Just so cheerful. Can I check your oil? Can I do anything else for you? Sure you can, ma'am.
I just love, she's so good. But they're all good. All of these people, all of these little characters that come in and out of this story are they're just living their lives.
Yeah.
This is where they live and this is the kind of stuff they see every day. And the big truck is sort of like Snuffleupagus. Like they kind of don't ever see the big truck or acknowledge the big truck, really. Certainly not as any kind of a menace, except for the snake lady.
When she carries the snake with her, like oh, poor baby.
Oh, I know. It's so brilliant. It's such a brilliant. He's so smart. It's such a brilliant movie.
We're fans.
You're fans. It's really good. It's so good. And there's a reason why, like, it just entered the American imagination and culture, right? I mean, this is right away. This movie came out before I was born. So I don't ever remember a time where people weren't talking about this movie.
Yeah.
You'd be on a road trip and you'd be like, oh, don't pass this guy. I wonder how truckers felt about that.
I'm sure they loved it.
Maybe.
I'm sure some of them are like, yeah, I get it.
Yeah, get out of my way, dude. Yeah, it's just, I just love it. So for that reason, I will have to say movie.
I'm going to say movie too, and also because Richard Matheson wrote the script, so that works out perfectly.
Yeah,
so, yeah,
you could tell.
It's an A+.
Yeah, the stuff that he added, the choices that he made in adapting it for the screen are perfect, absolutely perfect. Love them.
Yep. So
very exciting. Look at how long we've talked about this movie about a car chase.
It was a hit in Europe.
It was
a huge hit.
Yeah.
And then, when it came out on video, it was a big deal. And you get it.
So it is African American History Month. Again, yay. We were just looking at our list of titles that we've kind of been compiling as our listeners have been suggesting them over the last year. And we have decided that next week we are going to do Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, which I am very excited about.
Me too. It's August Wilson is our author. It's a pretty easy. It's a play. It's pretty easy to get your hands on, and the movie is available everywhere. So it works out perfectly well. We're excited about that. I've never seen it, so I'm really.
Nor have
eager.
I.
Yeah.
It was just one of those. It was always on my watch list, and I just never got to it. So I'm excited that we're going to finally do it.
Yeah, me too. So that's the show this week. Please follow us on all the places we mentioned before. Give us your suggestions. The email, once again, is book-versus-movie-podcast, spelled it out, at gmail.com. And Margot, where can they find you?
You can find me online at coloniabook.com, and all of my social media callouts are at She's Nacho Mama. And where can they find you?
You could find me on Twitter at Brooklyn Margot. Instagram, it's at Brooklyn Fit Chick. My site is brooklynfitchick.com. And my TikTok is Margot Donahue. And I've been posting a lot of like filmed in Brooklyn kind of things there. So let me know what you think. We will be back soon with a new episode. Thanks so much for listening. We really, really appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good week.
I'm probably not the best kind of judge of how many sides I have as a picture maker. One film I can say, I indulge myself in that. That was for me, or that's for the audience. That's popcorn, and that's brain food. I don't know if I'm the best judge of that, really, because I take all my movies seriously. I took Raiders of the Lost Ark seriously. I had to. I had to believe the story was really happening. If I thought it was a romp and a confection, then the film would have been a parody of the serials from the 1950s and 40s. But I took that story very, very seriously, and I wanted the audience to believe that Indiana Jones was actually going after the lost Ark of the Covenant, and when that Ark opened, the power of God was within and was going to wreak havoc on the Nazis. I mean, I believe that stuff, and I don't think you can be a filmmaker, a serious filmmaker, making audience popcorn movies unless you believe the stories you're telling.
Thank you so much for listening to the Book versus Movie podcast. We are a part of the Frolic Podcast Network. You can find more podcasts you will love at frolic.media/podcasts. We follow the hashtags LadyPodSquad and Podern Family. If you want to support the show, you can go to our Patreon page, go to Patreon, and look for Book versus Movie podcast. We have a basic Facebook page, but we also have a private Facebook group. Go to Facebook and type in Book vs. Movie Podcast Group if you want to join that. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Book vs. Movie. Spell all those words out. If you'd like to send us an email, it's Book vs. Movie Podcast, spell that all out, at gmail.com. You can follow Margot D at Brooklyn Fit Chick on social media, and Margot P at She's Nacho Mama.